What's cracking, everybody, and welcome to a very special episode of the Good Kraken podcast. I am your host, Ernell Pearson, alongside three beautiful people. Today, we are back with another episode of The Subtle Sound of AAPI Hate with our reunion show to catch up with the three of you to see how y'all have been doing since the last time we got together. Holly, what is new?
Hi, so been doing lots of reflection, talking to other AAPI folks. Been doing what I can for AAPI Heritage Month that just passed. Was a little tough because we just formed our ERG at work that I'm helping to lead. I am leading. It's tough for me to remember to say because it's my first time doing anything like that, but it was honestly tough. There was a lot I wanted to do for Heritage Month, but you only have so much time, and I'm only one person, so I did what I could.
That's okay. I think that's kind of what we're all doing. Is just the best that we possibly can, all things considered. And hey, like it's a part of us. It's who we are. It's our month, so we can celebrate whatever damn way that we so please. You know what I mean? Mike, how have you been, dude?
I've been I guess.
Yeah.
Like I was talking about before the show, it's been a lot of new things happening in my personal life, and then a lot of things happening professionally as well. I just been so like my mental capacity is very limited, and so the ways in which I spend it have to be very deliberate and thought out. So I feel like I've been at capacity with most things in my life, which is fine. Like that's it's been it's good to have a lot of things happening in your life. It's just sometimes it's difficult to just like have a handle of everything, and like a lot of things. Like obviously we're gathered here today because of things that have happened in our world with regards to our people, and so when those things happen out in the world, and like this shit don't stop. It takes many forms, and it consistently happens and takes new forms in our world. And it's only been like 2 months since we last met up, and shit is always there's always something happening, and it can wear you down a lot. And I think that's I think a lot of people in marginalized groups have experienced this, like maybe probably like the most of their lives, but in such veracity or such high volume in the past year that I think that we're starting to, or we have been learning how to cope with those things, how to internalize those things, because as painful as those things can be, you have to learn how to limit the ways in which it affects you, because if you don't know how to handle those things, they can ruin, they can damage the things that you like, your professional and personal lives. And I think that's something that I've really started to kind of internalize for myself in the past few months. Is like, you don't want to say that you're forcing yourself not to care about certain things, but just having to learning how to handle those things, as many other parts of your life need maintenance, need to be paid attention to. So in that regard, like I feel like I've been holding up pretty well. And but it's never easy, right? So I'll say so I'll that's that on that.
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure. And like, good for you though for kind of like sitting on that, compartmentalizing that, because that's a big task to take on for anybody at any point in life, so but good for you for really just like making that boundary for yourself to say, like, this is my limit, this is what I want to do when I want to do it, and that's not a line I'm going to cross. It's good for you, dude. Good for you. Rose, how about you? What is new? What's poppin'?
Okay, so I graduated college.
Hey,
congratulations!
I haven't shut up about it yet. I have been mostly taking care of my parents, finishing up finals, pretty much just trying to make sure that if I go outside, I'm safe, because SF has been crazy lately. There's a lot of stuff going on that has been very much like, you do hit that emotional limit sometimes of like, there's only this much I can put up with, and it's not because I want to just like plug my ears and get rid of it, but it's more so I want to take some time to internalize what's going on around me before I just keep taking in all this traumatizing information that leads into, just not processing your emotions fully. And a lot of it has been in the form of just like keeping my parents safe, like making sure that I invest in good pepper spray. And it's a lot of small stuff because, like, there's only so much I can do as like a 5, 2, and 3/4, mind you, 3/4. The 3/4 are very important. Asian girl who's got like, like there's not much going on in the fists department. So it's just trying to survive for one, and then also just trying to, I guess, slowly take all these things in and think deeper about it in my own time, instead of just trying to take everything for face value and being like, oh, like this is just how it is, and not thinking any deeper of it.
Sure. Hey, that's, again, congratulations, by the way. Yeah, you're making big money moves, making big life moves, dude. That's good for you. I'm glad all of us have been kicking ass, really. I know the past few months have kind of been hard on all of us trying to navigate the waters of things that happened in Atlanta back in March, and like how Asian American Pacific Island Heritage Month has been treated. Or hi there, I'm Future in Hell, and I'm here to apologize for what has once again happened, where we were streaming a show, and unfortunately, for whatever God-given reason, the show just decided to not stream anymore. So this is my segue transition to get you from one point to another in the midst of this wonderful, piece of content that you are currently consuming, currently watching and listening to. And anyways, yeah, I wanted to apologize and let you know that there's going to be a weird transition here where out of nowhere Rose is going to continue talking, and it's going to seem like it's a little off topic, but it's not. And I'm sorry. And I can't promise that we're never going to do it again, but it probably will happen. So please be patient. Again, we've mentioned it before. We never said this show was good. It is. Anyways, yeah, enjoy. Continue on. We love you guys. Thank you.
And then at the same time, you're dealing with issues in like smaller communities. Like I was recently having this discussion with friends talking about, oh, it's really weird that there's a lot of new people that are. This is a very specific issue that's like very like, I guess, gaming related, for example, but VTubers and the rise of that during the pandemic has gone up by like a ton, right? But there's a lot of non-Asian VTubers that are basically, using like Asian nicknames online. Their presentation, their branding is very Asian oriented, even though they're not Asian at all. And they profit off Asian culture because they'll constantly be like saying phrases in Japanese, or like they'll run off like the kawaii aesthetic or whatever, and the whole entire jig of it all. And they end up kind of like profiting off Asian culture, but at the same time not doing anything about Asian American hate, like not spreading any resources about it. Yet they actively benefit off of it, the fetishization of it, right? And it's just kind of like spoiled down, watered down version that kind of just like, oh, like it's cute. So that's like one small issue of it, and like you can see that kind of echoed in online communities. Like there's tons of people now that are like photoshopping away their eyelids or whatever, or like intentionally like using like tape to pull up the corners of their eyes to look more Asian in their photos or whatever. Like that's a huge thing that's going on right now, and it's a huge conversation on communities like Twitter, like communities like TikTok. And it's very weird to see because it's like you're seeing like this love for Asian culture where they want to be Asians, and by Asians we really are just talking about like East Asians, right? Because that's the features they're going for. And then at the same time, like we are being like violently killed for causing a pandemic, even though we aren't. Like we're just, like we're most people here, like regardless, anyways, are like we didn't. None of us all took a trip to China and then we came back with COVID. You know what I mean? Like it's not how that works, but that doesn't matter to people because they're just looking for a reason to lash out. So it's crazy. It's crazy grappling with like the multiple levels of like, Asian American Pacific Islander Month, and then like all the other stuff that's building up on top of it, and trying to still be like informed and do your part while at the same time like preserving your sanity past a certain level.
That's kind of what Mike was kind of touching on earlier too, is just trying to find that balance and it's important that we do that, especially during our month, during events that have happened, during the seeing the suffering that our people go through. It's important to take those things on, finding those boundaries, finding those lines, really holding that weight in whatever way that we need to, so that we can emote appropriately based on what we know and what we see every day. Holly, what steps have you done? Like what are some of the tactics you've taken on to hold that weight for yourself?
I mean, yeah, I agree with Rose. There was definitely a huge conflict between being vocal about how important all of these issues are, but then at the same time, also wanting to keep yourself mentally healthy and not watching too many videos or entrenching yourself in all of the news that's going on. Because I know, like, same as your dad, Rose, like, my mom watches the news. Like, she literally keeps the TV on all day, every day, while she also works at home. And then she messages me all the links to the things that are happening in SF, because she's like, she wants me to be like, be informed and say, like, there's something that happened near you, just be safe, don't go out by yourself. But it's just, I don't watch the news myself for that specific reason. I don't want to have that in my head all the time. Like, it does stress you out. But then I get that in the form of my mom sending me these links because she wants me to be safe. So it's a little bit of both. Like, it's really tough to be able, or to have to do both things at the same time, and honestly almost kind of impossible. So shout out to all of us for doing what we can. I think one thing that I've had to remind myself of, and like other people around me have been good to remind me of it too, is that we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be the voice for the people in our lives. Because I know, like, for me personally, I do have people of color in my life, but I don't know that, like, there are a majority of non-POC in my life. So I feel a sort of pressure to be like reminding people that it's still happening or that it's important. But then I'm also pressuring myself, like I mentioned earlier, before we started the podcast, that we started an Asian and Pacific Islander ERG at work that I'm leading. And I put a lot of pressure on myself with only a few weeks till when May started, was AAPI Heritage Month. I put a lot of pressure on myself to do something, right? Like, I wanted to do something, but I wanted to do something big, because I was like, well, if it's not like a stream, or if we're not donating, like, what's the point? We need to be doing something like substantial. But then at the same time, I have to remember I'm only one person. I only have a few weeks. Like, I don't want to do something half-assed and have it not be done correctly. So, in the end, I had to basically remind myself, whatever I'm going to do is good. Doing something, no matter how big or small, still means that you're doing something. And I think we all need to give ourselves a little bit of credit for that. We don't need to be the front runner, like, all over the news, be tweeting about it every single day to be like doing something, or like to be seen as doing something, I guess. I had to remind myself that even doing a little bit was doing something. Like, it's the first time we celebrated AAPI Heritage Month, so it's that should be something that I count as a win.
For sure, yeah, that's an agreement. I think we can all agree with that. Like, it's you. I guess really what the only thing I want to add on to that is just like it's kind of what Rose is saying, like that or all of us actually, that weight is we have to hold it in stride. We have to feel what we need to feel with it, and be smart about it, and like you were saying earlier, it's like a majority of, at least me, I don't want to speak for Rose or Mike, but a majority of the people around me are not BIPOC people, and so it's like having to sort of navigate those waters at the same time, especially during this month, especially when those conversations come up. We have to handle it accordingly one way or another. Mike, do you have anything specifically that you've been sort of like doing to help yourself protect your own feelings, kind of take this on, hold that weight?
It's difficult, but I think the thing that I find solace in is seeing other organizations and other people kind of driving that sort of support in many ways. Like, I know IGN did a huge thing to support the support Asian organizations that are trying to fight against this sort of discrimination and stuff like that. So I was like, seeing that, I know Stella Chung and a bunch of other folks at IGN were leading that charge, and I don't know, I just admire the people like that, and I know that like other people are more openly conscious of those sorts of things and helping drive that sort of support. So I think I find comfort and happiness in the fact that it's a conversation that is now at the forefront, and people are taking it seriously, and people are learning more about like what this actually means. It's not just like an historical thing that happened in the past. No, they're like, these things are still happening in our lives, and we can do something about it. Personally, it's more about like you said, protecting your energy and understanding when you've seen enough of it, and which sounds cold and callous. But I think that I've naturally, over the past couple weeks or months, I've naturally gravitated away from social media, and I don't know, it's conflicting because I like being on social media. I like knowing what's happening. But at the same time, when I come back to it, I'm like, man, I got a life to live, man. Like, and like I haven't necessarily been at the forefront of many things, and I feel conflicted about that in regards of like, I have the power to decide how I want to celebrate myself and celebrate, my people or whatever. And like, I definitely admire and I want to give props, and I support like a lot of folks who are trying to do something about it. I feel like maybe I could have done more, but it's like, like I said, I need to take care of myself, and I think taking a step back is not necessarily a wrong decision to do, because
not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, and like, but those things are very much conscious, and I think it's a lot more prominent in the conversations I have with the people in my life. So that's the thing right there, is that, well, I would say most of my closest friends are Filipino, or or Asian in general. And I think that that's at the forefront of our conversations and how we see ourselves in the world. And I think us being more conscious of it has also kind of given us this sort of reinvigoration of our identity, and a better, like I wouldn't say a better understanding, but a much more solid understanding. Like, we're a lot more confident in our understanding of ourselves. I think that has helped us kind of navigate the world, where I do feel a lot more confident when I present myself to other people, or if I'm doing work, or when I have conversations with the people who are closest in my life. Yeah. And yeah, it's just everyone kind of, when you are the affected group in a sort of, in like a situation such as this, you need to be the one who calls your own shots in terms of how you internalize and how you deal with it. Some people like to be at the forefront and drive change, and I admire that, and I want to do that at some point, but sometimes you're just not in the right mental space to be doing that sort of thing. And like I said earlier, like, when you're running over capacity, it's some point you need it to be like, you need to think about what you can and cannot do, and keeping yourself sane. So yeah, that's in terms of like, yeah, in terms of taking care of myself, protecting my energy. I think that I've taken on a lot more of a focus on my personal life, more than anything else. And I would say that like I said, the level of consciousness and support I've seen from other folks around, especially like around the gaming industry, because that's what I'm connected to, has been heartwarming. And I'm glad that that is part of the greater consciousness. So I find comfort in that.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, to kind of just echo all of you, for me, it's really just been about trying to find the balance between being hurt by what had happened and trying to find where my boundaries are and what I'm willing to do and where I'm willing to stand on the forefront of these conversations. And a lot of it's kind of been backing off of the heated fight of it and putting more of my energy towards just support. And so with our show, specifically Good Kraken, we've been doing everything we can to make connections and build relationships with other AAPI people within the creator communities and within, you know, the games industry and stuff. And it's been awesome. It's been a really great turnout for us. And we found, me specifically, I can't speak for Devin, my co-host, but I have found a level of fulfillment that has been imbued in me with building those relationships and having these conversations and giving a platform to voices that all of us can agree are not as heard as we would like them to be, especially from AAPI people. And for me, like, the healing has come from looking at it from a perspective of I can either be upset and angry and overwhelmed and emotional to the very core of my being about this, or I can take care of myself, be healthy, and be a shining light for anyone who is like me, an Asian Pacific Island man that would like to discuss, that needs help, that needs support, that needs to just have a conversation about it. And on top of that, teaching people more information that they need, because I've gotten so many questions from my white friends, my not Asian friends, my not Pacific Island friends, more in the past couple of months than I ever had in my entire damn life. And I don't know if you guys have had the same sort of outcome, but it's been an interesting experience seeing that. Lots to talk about food, lots to talk about, you know, where my parents are from and like what we're about, what we do. And so it's been a cool experience, but that kind of navigates into my next question. And just to make sure that we're being good on time and stuff, because I know Holly has to get out of here right around the 2:00 mark, I'm going to hit each of you with some of these questions individually. And after each person has answered them, if you guys would like to chime in, you're more than welcome. But I'm going to give each of you separate questions here. So, Holly, I want to start with you here. What are some differences you've noticed around the not AAPI people that you know, your friends and coworkers and such, that you've noticed since AAPI Heritage Month and since what had happened in March in Atlanta? Are there any differences specifically that you can speak on?
I don't know if I'm just imagining it per se, but I will say it feels as though people, because it's been such a huge issue, non-AAPI folks were more inclined to seek me out and give me props for the work that I was doing, specifically related to like AAPI and like creating the ERG. So I think that was great, but I'm not sure I would really say I've noticed a huge difference. And I say that because, you know, some of the things that I've done is I basically worked with some members of my work's ERG to create internal posts that go out on our internal site, just about some of their stories. So like one member wrote about her podcast called "But Where Are You Really From?" So shout out to Angela for creating that podcast. It's in season 3, so she's been doing this for quite a while. And I talked to I interviewed one of our VPs just about his career growth to become a VP, because, you know, that's something that we don't normally see as an Asian in like mid to like C-suite executive level positions. So I wanted to interview him about his career growth and kind of what advice he had for others to get to that level. And out of those posts, I feel as though I've seen a lot of non-AAPI folks express positivity and thankfulness that people have been sharing their stories. But I don't know that that's like new per se. I also think it's partly because like some of us have been awakened to that part of ourselves, if that makes sense. Like I think a big theme I've seen in talking with a lot of the members of my ERG is we've all kind of had this big feeling of otherness. not just of like otherness from white people, but otherness of like even from other BIPOC, and like otherness even in our own cultures. Like if I'm Chinese, I still feel othered from other Chinese people. So I think it's actually a result of even us as AAPI being more forthcoming about ourselves and like actually taking the time to think about ourselves and our lives and where we come from. Because it's just something that we pushed down for so long that I think it's now that we are starting to explore and bring up that part of ourselves and highlight it. Because before it was something I personally pushed down a lot because it's just part of making it, like surviving. I think us bringing that up is now helping non-AAPI folks also realize we haven't been doing that. So yeah, lots of issues I brought up there, but I think that's the big thing for me is I've seen a lot of AAPI folks start to go on that journey of finding more about themselves, and I think that's helped others recognize that too, and giving us the space to do that. So I think that's good.
Yeah. That there's a lot to unpack there. I want to say because that's like I feel that on so many levels. Especially when you mention that like you feel othered by your own people to such an extent. And I saw Mike have a reaction there. He was like, yeah. Unfortunately, like it's weird. It's so weird, like how that just sort of like, you know, bubbled out of nowhere, but like there's an argument of like, was it out of nowhere? You know, it's I feel you. All of us can definitely feel you on that. Rose, I want to talk to you a little bit about how what are some differences in how you have handled talking about justice with AAPI people since the last time we had talked? Or do you feel like you've gotten even heavier on the forefront of these conversations? Do you feel like you've backed off a little bit? I want to hear from you a little bit on this because you were very outspoken during our last episode and loved every single second of it. I want to see if you've made any changes to your tactics at all.
I think for the most part, I am not fighting with 10-year-olds on TikTok comment sections. I have learned to preserve my energy for that. I think a lot of the times it mostly reflects, I'm heaviest about it around the people that I surround myself. I know that in a lot of online spaces, like what I mentioned earlier with like the rise of VTubers, there's this whole entire thing about like quote unquote Asian fishing in like online spaces where it's very much like just these white girls that are very intent on pretending to look Asian or profiting off like anime, like Korean culture, stuff like that. And it gets super divided when you get onto the internet, right? Because you're dealing with a variety of people with a bunch of different beliefs. And a lot of the times on social media, you're very much capped by, you're just not allowed to have a lot of nuance when it comes to these kind of topics because you're restricted by like this character count that you can't fully explain yourself in. I still am very vigilant about it in my personal life and with the people that I personally surround myself with. The only thing is just that I feel like it's a waste of time to fight every single person in a comment section if they're also probably just saying shit to say shit. You know what I mean? But it is still very important. And I think I do have a lot to say about these topics with my friends, particularly because I understand that, like a lot for me personally, like a lot of my friends are Asian. I also have a lot of BIPOC friends. It's just kind of like how I grew up, I guess. Like when you're in the Bay Area, you're just kind of like you grow up in like a super like mixed environment. So I definitely have more BIPOC friends than I think white friends, but that's just like the nature of my voice is cracking really hard. That's just the nature of like my upbringing, I guess. So I think all in all, I've learned to tone it down for the people that don't matter because obviously like there's a point where you're just wasting your time, you know?
Mhm.
But if you're able to have those conversations with your friends, for example, right, then that's all that matters in the end because those are the people that you're spending your time with. And the people that you're friends with have a lot to say about you as a person and your character, you know?
Yeah. That's a big change for all of us, I think. I know that, you know, like I said earlier, I was very much just having those conversations with whoever the fuck was wanting the smoke. And and like I get the weight of having to back off, because it gets so exhausting, it gets so tired, like I get so over having the same arguments with the same people that just very obviously are not going to give a shit in the long run. So yeah, Rose, for sure, like kind of focusing our energy towards the people that are around us, that are in our circles, that are in our universes, is going to be so much more pivotal. Sorry, excuse me. In making that change, especially for us each individually, and the people that we know, our other Asian friends and Pacific Island friends, and so on and so forth. It's really important to do that. Now, Mike, you as a dude in the industry, doing the motherfucking thing, do you feel like the industry has made progress, that has moved in a way that has better benefited us since our last get together in March? I don't know if you've made any observations as far as like what the industry as a whole has been doing for us to work towards giving us more platforms, towards putting the spotlight on more AAPI voices. I want to hear what you've observed the past couple of months.
Yeah, this kind of ties into what I was talking about earlier, in that I found comfort in the fact that other organizations, other companies have taken this a little bit more seriously. Mm-hmm. And I'm also happy to see a lot of other fellow like editors and writers be more open about that sort of thing and the things that they talk about. One specific example is my boy Matt Kim over at IGN, who shortly after a lot of like this came into the broader public consciousness, kind of wrote a little bit more about that on IGN. And it's like, okay, like this is the biggest gaming platform, and my boy Matt Kim is writing something extremely like deep and thoughtful about that. And I think that with editorial staffs that aren't Asian are more, I feel like they're more open to those sorts of having those sorts of stories told. And that's really important, because when the time comes, when like I feel like they're like in the same way that you want other BIPOC to it's like smart to have BIPOC on staff, and then letting them be the ones who drive the voices for whatever topics or issues are at the forefront of the industry. And the same thing with like making sure you have women on your staff when like things like this come up, so you have an informed voice and you give them the platform that they deserve to kind of lay it out there for themselves and for people like them, if they want to do that sort of thing. And that's a very important thing, because like, I was like, oh, tapping, I was like, oh, okay, we have this certain issue going on. We're gonna come to you because you're the one. And you're like, okay, yeah, I'm exhausted. Like, also like being conscious of not going to the person because they're the token person who can make sure that you have that voice covered in your outlet or whatever. So, I have a lot more. I have more faith in these sorts of things coming into consciousness, and like this extends to all other identities as well. For example, like this is like, I guess kind of close to Holly, but like Far Cry 6 just got like revealed, and I think that the conversation came up again, like when it was first revealed, that this is a game that is touching on parallels with a lot of things happening in Latino countries or Latin American countries, and just like the power struggle of revolutionaries and dictatorships, and it's a very complicated thing. And Far Cry has a specific history of handling those sorts of things, and I think that when those things come up, a lot of folks are like, yo, like some of us are very excited about this game, but if we're going to really critically look at this game, it's probably important to make sure that you have Latinx folks at the forefront of those conversations. And then so I hope that, or I have faith that the same thing applies when it comes to things about like Asian identity and sort of those sorts of things. And I think that one microcosm of that was back when like a game Indivisible came out. I don't know if folks are familiar with Indivisible, but I remember Callie, who was our former reviews editor, came to me and said, like, you know what, like or I said like, oh, I feel like I should review this game. She's like, yeah, of course. Like you are the one I would want to cover this. And I was like, oh, that's so nice. Like this is your realm. You should own this sort of space. And I was like, thank you. I appreciate your support in that. Like that means a lot. And I want that to be the standard across other editorial teams. And I think that going through this kind of normalizes that, or makes folks a lot more conscious of that. And I was very thankful to have someone like Callie who's already that's already at the forefront of her mind. And I hope other folks are like that as well. And I don't know, but those things take time. And like, of course, those things aren't always going to come up. But when they do, me and a lot of other folks got our eyes on that sort of thing. And I think, I don't know, it's kind of nice that I've also been able to kind of carve my niche in a way in terms of how I cover things that, I'm not Japanese, but like being able to like having that mindset of the broad strokes of Asian identity kind of still feeds into we have a lot of cultural parallels and things like that, and especially as Asian Americans who are looking at games that are made from from Asian continent, whether it be like indie games from Southeast Asia or Chinese games with like Genshin Impact, because I know Rose talked a lot about that last time we talked about it, and then it's like being able to be the one who's conscious of those things, who's familiar with those sorts of things. I think that's really important, and I hope that I hope I'm doing that in my work, and I hope to see that across other teams. And I have a lot more faith than I did before, I think. Say that much.
For sure.
So,
yeah. Holly, I actually want to kind of toss this question off to you too. Have you, being someone that was the last time that we had a discussion on this topic, you were very very outspoken on the industry side of this and how management takes care of AAPI employees and how that maneuvers into the overall like space that we live in as far as working in different industries. Do you have anything you've observed as far as like how industries have changed? Like, I don't know if you've kind of been keeping your eye open on any like big moves that you've seen with other businesses in the industry and stuff handling API employees and spaces. Have you seen anything specifically you want to speak on?
I don't know that there's anything specifically. I think in general, I've seen, as I think myself and Mike have mentioned, there's been a lot more space given to AAPI folks, and not just AAPI folks, but even BIPOC or any other like typically marginalized groups. I think have been given a lot more space. I think it's still tough because there's such a big gap between folks who are working at a specific level. So like for myself versus all the way up to like like top management. I think it's just tough. It's tough to realize that companies are built the way they're built, and obviously companies want to make money. So I think that sometimes comes into a big conflict with taking care of its people. Like for better or for worse, I think it's something that people have always tried to and will probably continue try to tackle. I just would say it's extremely difficult, but I will say I've seen a lot more companies give more space to those folks, and I think that's really important because it's very similar to what Mike mentioned. Like I appreciate that more space is being given, but I think for me personally, I've always felt the struggle of I would like to be given this space, but at the same time, I also don't want you to rely on me. For that expertise. I know it's like it's a very fine line, and like it's very like sensitive situation. It's I think it's something that people are still trying to figure out, and like even me personally, I'm still trying to figure out, how do I tell people, yes, I'd like to be given the space, but you should probably approach me in a way that doesn't say you should do it because you're Chinese, and maybe say, would you like to, because I know that your expertise, like that your background is, so. Yeah. It's a very it's you could say more, Mike, if you wanted to, but
so it's kind of the thing of like not completely handing it over to me and be like, hey, you figure it out, you have the power to figure it out. I'm like, cool, but like support me in this too, like help you in a sort of way. And I think that think folks, because the former can be well-meaning, but that puts a lot of pressure on whoever is affected by it. So it's like, I need your support too in order to like pull these things off. And there is something something I do want to say in addition to with this question, what I've said just now. I think it's related, and it's another can of worms. But I think that a lot of drives to support Palestinian folks who are facing a lot of violence right now and have been historically, and that being at the forefront. I think that's when I've seen these sorts of things get dicey. And that, so I want to shout out Tamor Hussein from GameSpot. That's my guy. That is 1000% my guy. He has 1000% led the effort on his end and for like representing GameSpot in terms of, this is what we're doing to support, this is what we can do with our level of influence. And he's been driving that. Like, he is working overtime, or not in the like company sense, but he is working himself day in and day out in these efforts. Want to like shout him out for doing that. And also the fact that GameSpot has the space, has been given the opportunity to do sorts of things. Because as I said, when I said that I have faith that a lot more editorial staffs are going to be open to these sorts of things, we've also seen how executive level and higher company level can push back and shut that shit down. Like when push comes to shove, are you really going to support us? That's the kind of thing that I'm still weary of, because as an editorial staff, you could have solidarity within that staff, and you saw that with IGN. And that like so much of that staff is like, we are banding together to say something with their efforts to show support for Palestinians. And then once that reaches a critical mass, then you have higher level folks that have the power to get involved and fuck up your shit. And so I think that what I will say is that the fact that this has become, there's such a huge spotlight has been put on this specific situation, I think that in a way, I have even more faith now, because I think that this is showing the power of numbers, the power of solidarity, in that, you powerful people want to play this game. Well, we have a number of people, and like making this much more public is going to put pressure on those executive level people who are trying to assert their own agenda. So I think that even though that's a very messy situation that shows how shit could go sideways, even though you're trying to do something good, trying to do something to support marginalized people who are facing violence, and showing goodwill for that sort of thing, I think that it's an example of what you can do when you band together to do something good. And like, that's just one of the many ways that I have faith in companies or people who have or like people who are in positions to create content, who are the video producers, who are the writers, the editors. That's what I mean when I say I have faith in them being able to support different groups of people when it needs to be done. But you have to keep it up, and you have to make sure everyone's on the same page with that sort of thing. If shit hits the fan, so it's another aspect to think of it.
Which is also kind of like the exact point that Tamor was trying to make in calling for platforms to do their studying on the Palestinian people, and that's a very good point to make, because it goes so much deeper than just Filipinos, Chinese people, Japanese people, what have you. There's an entire part of the world that are not perceived as Asian, that are not perceived as under the umbrella of AAPI, that very much are. And guys like Tamor making the push to say, hey, we have an entire group of people that are suffering some absolutely terrible things happening right now. We all, as people with platforms, have responsibility to do some studying, find out what's going on, push people to support in whatever way they absolutely can. And dude, Thank you for shouting out to more, because he's doing a really, really great job. And that actually segues perfectly into my next question that I have for you guys here is, and Rose, I want to start with you here. In our respective spaces, so you doing what you do in the gaming world, right? Do you have any role models or mentors that you feel are representing Asian Americans and Pacific Islands in a very real way that you want to shout out here?
Trying to think. This is hard because I'm thinking of the people in this call right now. I'm trying to like coherently think about like all the people that I know and put it all together into like, wow, like who do I know that's like Asian American and has done a really good job of being vocal about this?
I mean, all of
Yeah.
us, yeah, you're right, you know.
It's hard because it's like you kind of grow up when you're Asian American, you're like growing up, you're kind of like you learn to more or less, or like you're taught by like your parents, right? To not really make a fuss. You're basically
Yeah.
taught like, like, dude, like why are you causing problems for people? Like, even though it's not fair, like you just have to suck it up. And that's the mentality of most parents, right? So when you're growing up and you hear someone that's finally like, hey, like here's what's up, um, then it's kind of cool to see that Asians are becoming more vocal. But I can't think of anyone outside of the people in this call that have been super involved in the industry and has been able to be like vocal enough for me to really take note. I feel like a lot of what's been going on online specifically has been this weird mixture of it was supported for a little while and then people just kind of forgot about it if you weren't Asian. You know what I mean? And I you can see it, not I don't wanna say because it's like a trend to them, because I know some people just get caught up in, like, their own lives and stuff like that, and that's just the nature of how, unfortunately, like, it shouldn't be this way, but that's just the nature of how, like, the internet is, you know what I mean? Like, it's always moving towards the next thing, and that shouldn't necessarily happen when it comes to, like, Asian American hate or, like, Black Lives Matter or, like, other, movements, um but it's hard, because you're constantly looking for, like, some sort of, I guess, moral support in the wake of everything that's going on, but at the same time, like, you've reached this level of kind of not necessarily tuning it out, but you get used to understanding that, like, "Oh, this will pass eventually." It'll pass online, but it's not gonna pass in real life, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, even Sarah Dope here, she's watching, she's in the chat. She says, I feel like we got 12 hours after the Atlanta shooting and then that was it. And that's very telling, because I feel the exact same way. Like, we had 12 hours to a week and people were very gammon together about this and very adamant on pushing and having these conversations for a little while. And then, as all four of us kind of predicted in our last episode, is that heat kind of just slowly died down like a campfire. And we've all kind of just been, as a group, as communities, have been, doing our own parts to sort of individually fight the fight continuously on our own. And I like that you don't really have any one single person, Rose, that you want to call out, because all of us kind of just been doing it as a community, doing it as a people. Like, I can name off Sarah Dope, I can name off Snowlit, who's a really big part of this movement, this conversation as well. There's a lot of us creators have been kind of just doing the thing as far as pushing towards taking care of us and taking care of our communities. It's hard, because I wish that there were more people to be able to call out that are not in the AAPI umbrella. I know that, I want to put some attention towards Twitch having had recently released the new tags to be able to put, some more attention for people to build more in their communities and such. And that was a really awesome move. But as far as people individually, it's hard. It's hard to really spotlight any one single person. Holly, do you have anybody that you feel like that you would want to give a shout out to here before we get you out of the show?
Yeah, I'm glad that I was given some time a little bit to think about the question too, because I was very similar to Rose. I was thinking about the friendships I have personally and just people around me that I just like. I think celebrating their own successes, like it's not because they're AAPI, but they are AAPI folks who have been successful. So I think that's kind of the people I was thinking about. Like, I know my friend Belinda, like she used to work with us at Ubisoft, and now she's killing it as a narrative designer, like living her passion. You know, Ellie, who used to be my intern, but now she got hired on full time, and she's kicking ass continually. And as you mentioned, like Sarah Dope, I don't know her personally, but I know we connected via Twitter when all of this started happening. And but one of the things I wanted to shout her out for, which I'm sure she's a huge part of this, is I feel like Logitech's always been really great about giving space to like a lot of different groups. And I've seen them doing a lot in the AAPI space, and I'm sure she has a big part to do with that. Speaking of creators, like Asian Sensation has been doing a great job, very vocal. And someone that I don't know super personally either, but I just really appreciated her sharing her story was Ann Munition, because she's such a huge creator in the space. And I know she made a video that basically told the story of, and I'll sum it up really quickly, but basically she had always been questioned about what her background is, like ethnically, and she had never answered the question. She had her personal reasons not to, but she shared this story about meeting a fan who was Asian and had told Anne it was very important to that fan that to see someone like her be doing so well and being successful and being in that limelight, and that was really what brought her to make this video and say, yes, I am part Asian and I'm proud of it. And it's such a small, it seems like such a small thing, or like inconsequential, but just owning ourselves and our culture like that, I think was fantastic, because it's part of representation and part of, like, you know, I didn't think about representation in media until maybe in the past year or two, because I just didn't see it. So it was, I mean, something that I critically thought about, and I think seeing that more and more and having it be vocalized is super important. So those are the people off the top of my head, but shout out to all of it.
Awesome, dude. Awesome. Holly, before you go, can you tell everybody at home, our listeners and viewers, where they can find you, where they can connect with you and such?
I'm mostly on Twitter at the Holly Bible. You can also check out my Instagram at the same name, but I mostly just post about food because I love food.
Don't we all, dude? Like, this is the best part of being Asian. Our foods are dank. You know what I'm saying?
I'm gonna go get a hot pot today. So yeah,
I'm jealous.
Fully vaxxed people. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, right? All right, Holly. Well, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us. We will see you again next time. Okay.
Thanks, y'all.
Yeah. Be good. Have a good
day.
Bye.
I want to continue on here with another question for you. Well, actually, no, Mike, do you have anybody else that you wanna shout out as far as like being on the forefront of the stuff, or?
Yeah, I think I had mentioned Stella Chung and Matt Kim over at IGN. There's a lot of AAPI folks at IGN that I see putting a lot of effort into their drives. I think that like this month in May, they had a whole thing with a lot of big names driving charity, and I think that's shouts out to their efforts in doing that. That's really dope. I know there's many other folks who are involved in pulling something like that off. I mentioned Tamor Hussein, who's like, that's the homie, man. Like, that's my guy, and like seeing him do his thing has been inspiring, man. Like, I've been following him before I got to GameSpot. Now I get to work with him and see him work. It's just like, yo, I've always tried to get like you, but like, I really want to try and get like you. And also shouts out to Victoria Tran, who I know through when she was doing community management for Kit Fox. Now she's the community manager for Among Us. And she is just like the way she handles community management is like unlike anyone I've ever seen. And I think that it's important that like she's at the forefront, like probably the most biggest viral game out there, and she's being the social voice, and the voice in many channels for it. And just the way she's very transparent about how she does her community management, and also the effort she puts into bringing things like Asian representation to the forefront and normalizing that conversation with the platform that she has. that's the homegirl. But like, yo, she's doing that kind of work, and like combined with all the other folks that I see doing this sort of thing, it's like that also feeds into why I say that I have faith in this being taken more seriously. And I think that it's almost cynical to say that when these sorts of things happen, you can almost expect it to be the flavor of the week before people it gets out of the public consciousness, right? And I think Rose, you had mentioned that, and I very much feel you on that. But I do think that it's not foreign to anyone anymore. Like it'll stay in the back of people's minds. So when we as a people say we need to do this, or we need this platform, or certain things need to be said like that, we are taken more seriously now. And like if we're the ones who say like these things are still important, we should still be doing drives and efforts to support certain things, that we are not kind of given the roundabout or given the the runaround in terms of like, oh yeah, that's great, but we'll get back to you on that. And I feel like we have a lot more confidence, and we can be a little bit more bold about when we say we need to do these sorts of things. It's not like necessarily, oh, you're afraid of us now. It's more of like, you can take us more seriously, or you will take us more seriously. Because otherwise it's your ass if you don't. So I feel a bit more bold about those sorts of things, and not that I feel like I have to, and in my sort of workspace. But if push comes to shoves, and I have to do that, or I want to do that, I think that I'm a lot more comfortable in doing that, and I hope that extends to a lot of people. I know it's not easy. I know not everyone's situation is like that. But I would hope that, there's a level of consciousness that instills us with a little bit more confidence to do those sorts of things when we want to.
Fucking preach that, dude. Like,
yeah, sure.
Big agree. Yeah. We are more than able to be big and bold and brash and outspoken on this stuff now, and it does feel good. It feels really good to be able to just talk about this and see the other people that we care about just talk about in whatever way we want to now, and people very much seemingly are extremely understanding about it, and so it's felt good to really be able to have any conversation in whatever way we want to now about being Asian, to benefit, the discussion itself, to get the spotlight on us in the way that we absolutely need to, The one that I want to point out here today is actually our guest we're having on later on at 3:30 p.m. here at twitch.tv/Kraken show. His name's Island Style. He has been the forefront of the PI of the AAPI side of this with Twitch, and even just yesterday he ran a massive tournament, an Apex tournament, I believe, that had a whole bunch of people coming in donating towards donations that were focused towards Pacific Island charities and families and kids and stuff like that. And so he's been working his ass off, using his comeuppance, not just, to celebrate for himself, but use it in a way that is beneficial towards Pacific Island people, towards Polynesian people, and putting forth his energy towards making a difference for all of us minorities amongst minorities, and really trying to push towards there, and also too having a discussion about Polynesian people in gaming, which is not very common. It's not a common thing, and so it's been awesome to see him putting in the work towards that. And I definitely want to give the shout out to him on that accord. So the next question I want to move into here, and we only got a couple left for you guys. So Rose, I want to start with you here again. Okay, what do you want conversations around AAPI people to look like going
forward? I think within our own spaces, or within people that aren't AAPI?
I would say yes. Now, I would say people that are not AAPI talking to people that are.
Okay. I have a lot to say about this.
Yes.
I always do.
Yes.
But my thing primarily lies in same thing when we're having discussions about like other stuff going on. I think it's one thing. Well, there's like layers to this, right? Because there's layers of
fear.
Trying to think of how to say this. There's layers to how to approach this, right? Because you don't want to talk. You shouldn't be talking over API people, right? But at the same time, I think there's been this dialogue going on that's online that talks a lot about like Wasians in terms of like AAPI conversations, which is like that's a very hard topic to, I guess, dissect because again, like Asians cannot be generalized to this just one thing, right? Pacific Islanders cannot be generalized to like this just one thing that is a one size fits all. You have like Wasians that are white passing, for example. You also have Wasians that look very Asian. There's just such a big scale of, I think, what's going on right now when you talk about specifically Asian American and like Pacific Islander hate crimes, right? You're dealing with this mountainous thing of like people don't care when like when you're getting hate crime, like people do not give a shit like what specific kind of Asian you are, It's just they're trying to take it out on somebody. And I think it's important to be one respectful to understanding, and three, just if you're like 100% like not Asian at all, like there shouldn't be any kind of like speaking over or trying to speak for Asian people. And I've seen that happen a lot, especially online. So what I was mentioning earlier about the whole entire like like Asian fishing, etc. You see that a lot from white people who think they are being good allies by being like, hey, like this person is like purposely like trying to look Asian, stuff like that. And then literal Asian people will be like,
saying it.
Okay, and like
homegirl's just wearing eyeliner. Like that's all that's going on here. There's cases where it's really obvious, there's this one girl who blew up on TikTok for being like super pretty and like she had like very her videos were very somebody noted that her videos were very like intentionally like edited beforehand to hide like her eyelids and stuff like that. And somebody went through her Instagram and found like this old picture of her and like she's like this whole white girl, right? But she looks nothing. Hold up. I think I need to look for it later and I'll show you guys. But she had this whole entire thing about being like this like she had like the Korean flag in her bio and shit, and like she was writing her like captions in Korean. And then people went on her Instagram and they're like, you are a whole ass white girl with the Korean flag in your bio. Like, what is going on over here? So, like, there's cases like that. That's very obviously like, yes, okay, like you are definitely trying to be something that, you're not. But then it's just like you're attacking like some random girl online for like her eyeliner or whatever. And it's just like this white girl going like, oh, like that's Asian fishing. And I'm like, I don't think that's your call to make, for one. Or it's very weird because I think being online during the pandemic has made me very you're just online a lot. You see a lot of fights, It's just like the nature of things. So I see like such a wide variety of all these problems. And I understand all of it, right? But at the same time, I'm also like, Jesus Christ, this is a very specific problem that probably would not exist in real life. This is just something that exists in like internet spaces. And this happens a lot. And you see it in like, I guess, I want to say, this is probably biased because I think a lot of my online content is catered towards like anime fans and like video game fans, and they kind of go hand in hand. You know what I mean?
Do your thing. Do your thing. Speak on it, girl.
And I see that it's kind of like there are people that are like saying with their whole chest, like, "Oh, I wish I was Asian," I could deal with the hate crimes or whatever, but like I just wish I could be this cute little Asian girl or whatever. And I'm like, you're fucking crazy. Like you're crazy. Okay. Yeah. I get it now. You're either like 13 or like you're an adult. That's crazy. And it's so weird as a whole to see like, oh, like you're like adored online, but as soon as you get off your phone and you like go outside, you're reminded very starkly of your situation and the position that you're in and how little power that you have. And it's hard. I think it's such a difficult conversation to have for one, but it's something that you need to have, you know? Like the discomfort of it is not as important as the message of it. You get what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that in the end, the main goal essentially is to get across that, like, I think Asians are very often treated as commodities more than anything, specifically Asian women, but
Mm.
Asian people as a whole, because there's this whole entire thing of, there has been some conversations about like, oh, like why should we feel bad for Asian Americans? Like they are the model minority, and the model minority myth just isn't true. Um, we had like immigration exclusion acts like very early on. There's no talks about Chinese Americans who worked on the railroad very early on, and they were often like literally blown up for making the railroad, or they're just paid very poorly. Um, they were basically forced to continue working despite not getting paid at all. And there's a lot of conversations historically that I think a lot of people pull the model minority myth today because they assume that, like, yes, Asians statistically make a lot of money, right? As a whole, like, Asians are like very high earners, but they're not looking at, I think this is a much more nuanced statistic, because you can't just throw the statistic out there and be like, oh, Asian people aren't oppressed. Like they make a lot of money in America, so they're obviously fine, right? But the people that are, the top percentage that are pulling in this money are people that just came here in the past, like maybe like 5 to 10 years, and have nothing to do with the conversation at hand. Because again, like Asian American hate crimes largely mostly affect lower income Asian families, right?
Yeah.
And not even just that, but I think the conversation around that of like, oh, like Asian Americans make a lot of money, it's because they're literally just moving here, what they already like are established themselves as like doctors or whatever in like their own countries, and then they move over here. And that's very common, and it's hard because you have to kind of explain like, no, like Asian Americans, yes, statistically make a lot of money, but there's more layers to that. It's not that percentage of high earning people that are being affected by Asian American hate crimes, It's literally like the old dude that owns like the mom and pop shop that you go to every other weekend. It's like people in Chinatown, San Francisco, getting their stores broken into, getting like robbed in broad daylight, And it's hard. I think there's a lot of layers to it, and it's hard to explain in one
Yeah.
go.
Right. Mike,
And also,
go ahead.
yeah, I just jumped back into this conversation, but I was like, oh snap, this has triggered something in my mind. Also, like the concentration of Asian populations are in big cities that are very expensive, where the standard of like San Francisco is New York, San Diego, LA. These are the high concentrations of Asian Americans, and in order to just get by in these cities, you need to make a lot of money. And then so like the jobs that you get in these places are going to pay what you need in order to, well, I'm not going to say that for everything, but they're more likely to pay higher because the standard of living is so high in these highly concentrated cities. And then so it's like, oh, you can take the whole country, like the whole statistics for the whole country. It's like, well, yeah, if a certain population lives in a very expensive area, then yes, by default, they are going to have to make more money than any people who live in other cities that aren't so goddamn expensive. There's that. And like, obviously, like Rose said, like the people who are able to immigrate to America are the ones who either have, who are able to kind of pull it together or have some sort of like higher education. And that's not always the case, of course. I think like a lot of us can relate in that like a lot of our parents came here with nothing and eventually built something. So that's also part of that is part of our identity. That is part of the Asian American immigrant and immigrant child experience.
Yep.
So it's extremely complicated in that regard. And so if someone wants to point at a chart or statistic that says like, oh, you know, the highest earners are like actually like Chinese Americans or something, or like Filipinos are actually pretty high, I'm like, that means nothing to me. That means nothing to nobody, like, honestly. Because also, like, I don't know, we grow up poor too. It just so and there are pockets of poverty in the most expensive cities. Poverty in San Francisco is, you would be fucking balling in the middle of bumfuck nowhere. And if you're from bumfuck nowhere, that no hate to you, I'm just saying that like 50K in San Francisco, you are living below the standard. You take 50K to somewhere in
Montana
the Midwest,
or some shit. Yeah.
You are motherfucking balling. You are living good. So consider that when the conversation about earnings and statistics. So that's just
sure.
shit pissed me off, bro.
No, I get it. I get it. And I'm glad that, Rose, that you brought that up, because that's I know last time when we had our discussion, I kind of asked you guys a little bit about things that you feel like are overlooked when it comes to being Asian. I feel like that is one big thing that is drastically misconstrued, is that, like, you know, there's a lot of statistics around Asians, generally speaking, right? Yeah, I mean, they're talking about, you know, intellect, education, starting businesses, income, so on and so forth, what have you. Like, we have a lot of just tiny stereotypes that are quote unquote backed up statistically, and that is something that I feel like is really important to point out. Now, Rose, I know you were kind of going somewhere near the end of your conversation as far as like how you're wanting conversations to go moving forward when coming to demographics of non-BIPOC people, non-Asian people talking to Asian people. Do you have anything that you wanted to cap off with that? Because I know you're kind of going somewhere there.
Oh, yes. I think a lot of it is like, it all leads back to, because I've seen a lot of these conversations online, and it's all either very angry or trying their hardest to explain something that can't really be explained online. Um, I really think that as a whole, like, there obviously there's a lot of cases where I guess a lot of people aren't going to readily understand immediately, but I think the notion of just hearing Asian Americans out is extremely valuable. And it's hard because when you talk about it in most conversations, like, people will usually tune out. And I get that because some people are very like self-oriented, like they don't care unless it directly involves them. But for the people that do want to listen, I think the conversations are important because it's good for, I guess, it's a good conversation to have for a lot of younger Asian Americans that are growing up. Like, we have so many kids nowadays that have such like unprecedented access to social media, phones, etc. And you see a lot in like older Asians now, like people like our age, that kind of grow up saying like, "Oh yeah, like I mostly gravitated towards Asians in real life because there was no, like, we didn't exist online." You know what I mean? Like, our only representation in like 2012 was maybe like Wong Fu Productions and Ryan Higa. Like, that was it. You know?
Yeah. Timothy Delgado was big because we thought he was Filipino, but he's Thai, and it's like, you know, close enough.
Close enough, you know?
Yep.
And then now you have Saweetie and her, who are part Filipino, and then you have Olivia Rodrigo, who is also half Filipino. And that's really cool to see because the more that, you know, the more that Asians have a voice in social media, the more that we can uplift these Asian artists, right? Like, Saweetie always talks about, like, she talks about her Filipino mom. Like, she very much participates in her Filipino culture because she cares so much. Like, she loves her mom, and she always say, she, like, everyone, like, Filipinos love her because she's so open about, you know, embracing her culture, especially in a time where, for people our age, when we grew up, we were actively suppressing our culture. We were actively like, oh, like, we were like subconsciously, like, we were just trying to blend in and seem as normal as possible. Like, we would abandon like our native tongue. We would sneer away at like our parents making us food from our own culture. And I think it's really hard because we essentially grew up and we don't want the same thing happening to kids now. Like, we're basically doing this for like the kid versions of ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's difficult because you have to kind of live with the fact that like that's my upbringing. I can't do anything to change it, but I can help other children that are obviously going to be online, kind of see and hear that, like it's something that you can talk about. It's something that you should talk about. Um, and I like it sucks because like specifically for me, I know when I was growing up, I tried very hard to abandon my Chinese heritage. I didn't like speaking in Cantonese. I didn't like eating the food my mom made me. I had like this hatred for dim sum, and now I still don't like dim sum, but that's like for an entirely different taste reason. Because I've just had it so much as a kid. Like you get dim sum now, and you're like, okay, I can get this whenever I want. Okay, you know what I mean? But when you're growing up, it's not like that, I think. It's a lot more difficult. It's a lot more ashamed for the most part. But I think that respectful conversations should be held, not even just towards like in between Asians, but like as people as a whole, which is like the whole entire point I guess I was trying to make, which was very long and very roundabout, but we made it.
We love you for what you are. Absolutely.
I take 10 years to make a basic point.
Rose, you always come in with the heat. I don't know what you're talking about. You come in here spitting all the fucking facts, dude. It's like you are more than welcome to drag on however fucking long you want. Like I kind of want to just like do like you on it. Like I'm gonna give you the solo cam and you can just talk for the next hour if you want to. Like that's so
I have so much to say.
Dude,
and I think it's like because when you work in gaming, right? Like gaming, anime, weeb culture, like Asian culture is very combined. Like it comes almost hand in hand, right?
Yep.
When you think about gaming, you think about like nerd culture, you think about anime, you think about like whatever, like you think about K-pop now. And
the
it's
BTS
weird.
meal at McDonald's that just happened.
Yeah. And then it's like it's crazy because you'll see like it's huge. Like it's undeniably huge. But there is something very weird about, I guess, I don't want to say the commodification, but I want to say that it's like we're getting, like Asians are finally getting attention, but it's specific towards Korean and Japanese. And that's the only kind of thing that is ever necessarily set in like a great light. I've seen, like, for example, like Chinese people, like we have the whole entire COVID thing going on. Vietnamese people like constantly get made fun of the the nail salon voice, stuff like that. You see like a lot of Filipinos get shit on for like just, I guess it's like the joke, the running joke that like all K-pop fans are like just like 13-year-old Filipino girls, and it's like it's very weird because you're just kind of like in this weird thing of like when you think about here's an example that I saw that was really good. You'll see like people talk in Korean and Japanese, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's so cute." Oh my god, like their language is like so fun and like, so cute and so nice on the ears. Hear anyone speaking like Tagalog or like Chinese or like anything else or like Vietnamese, like you get made fun of. And you can see this in specifically the treatment of K-pop idols speaking in Korean compared to your immigrant parent who speaks in their native language. Your immigrant parent that speaks in a native language is considered dumb, not very educated. Like, oh, they never got a chance to learn English. Like, how sad. And then you have like your K-pop idols that are from like fucking San Francisco or like from America or whatever. They'll speak in Korean. Everyone's like, oh my god, he's so smart. He's so educated. He's so beautiful. And he gets infantilized. Like he's like, oh, like our sweet little baby boy and stuff like that. And it's very weird to see because you actively see this like, yes, we love Asians, but we only love Korean and Japanese people. The rest of you, you can sit in the waiting room, and we'll see how close your face aligns to Eurocentric beauty standards, and maybe we'll consider you. There's even this conversation about like everyone is like hyping up Olivia Rodrigo, right? But nobody's talking about like her and Saweetie, who are Filipino as well. And everyone's like, "Oh, we finally have some Filipino representation." Like we have had they have had Filipino representation. Her literally has a Grammy, but nobody talks about that. There's issues. There's so many multi-layered issues, and people have brought up colorism in that conversation about like why people exclude Saweetie and her. People have also talked very much about kind of like the picking and choosing of like Chinese K-pop idols who are like Chinese, but they learn Korean, they learn the culture, and like they basically pass. But you know, to K-pop fans, it's very much like, oh, like he's basically Korean, so like he's so cute. But if he talks in Chinese, it's like, you know,
Yeah.
it's so jarring to think about, and I think it's even weirder when you talk about it in internet spaces because again, this doesn't exist that much in real life. But you'll see like people make entire brands out of pretending to be Asian or referencing Asian culture. Like they'll have like random Japanese text that they don't even know what the fuck it says on like their like stream assets, or like they'll make a whole brand out of like being like, oh, like I'm just this cute little weeb who like is trying to learn Japanese, and like I'll say like random like Japanese phrases during my stream or whatever, or they'll do the whole entire like this is very specific, but you see a lot of people that aren't Asian try to benefit off Asian culture. They'll usually try to act like babyish. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like this automatic like, oh, like all Asian women are just like so cute or whatever. And you see the contrast again. Like this is a huge issue because it just shows how divided Asians are in terms of the treatment in America specifically. You see, for example, you'll see like K-pop idol groups for girls, right, get blown up extensively, and everyone knows Koreans for like K-pop idols. Oh my god, amazing singers, amazing makeup, amazing tech. Oh my god, everything's so fun and cute. And then on the flip side, you see like people will talk about like Filipino women like mail order brides. You know what I mean? Like there's this whole fucking trend on TikTok about like, oh, me and my like Filipino wife, and like she makes me food every single day and she cleans up after all my messes and she always takes care of me and she's like my servant, and like I found her in the Philippines and I brought her back. You know, like it's fucking weird. It's weird.
It is.
It's unendingly weird, and it drives me insane because it's so like there's this weird thing of like, you know how people talk about those couple YouTubers and they'll never shut up if their significant other is like Korean or Japanese or whatever. It's like going to the supermarket with my Korean boyfriend, going to the supermarket with my Japanese boyfriend. I ask my Japanese boyfriend how my Japanese sounds. You know, like it's very like Jesus
corny.
Christ. It's like,
yeah.
Is this like your only personality trait? Like,
yeah.
Oh, I'm dating an Asian person. It's okay if I like tape my eyelids or whatever. It's so I have no other word for it than that. It's fucking weird.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's fucking weird.
It is.
Yeah,
it is
right?
fucking weird. It is fucking weird.
It's unsettling.
I know that like the last conversation we had, like Mike, you were talking about how, and I'm sure all three of us can agree, even Holly could agree that like we all have very visceral reactions to seeing how we're sort of fetishized amongst white communities, especially on social media. Like you go on a TikTok right now, I bet within 2 swipes we would find some video of some white girl doing some fucking Nean dance bullshit that is very much, you know, I don't even know if it's called a Nean dance. I just called it whatever the fuck they think it's fucking called these days. And there's just like it's so imbued in how social media is perceived now that like being a Japanese girl is the like rave. It's all the rave for little, you know, white women to wear a fake school uniform and dance around their skirt, you know, for white dudes. Even like Rose, you mentioned earlier, like having like random white people using like kanji in their names and shit. Like I just the other day ran into a very clearly white dude on Facebook with bright blue hair, like ninja colored hair, which
Ninja. The name itself.
Speak of the fucking devil. And just kanji in his entire name. Didn't even know his name at all because it was just kanji. And I know just enough kanji to know that that shit was not his fucking name. And it just, dude. It's corny. It's tacky. I hate it. But the reason I want to move that over to Mike is because like this is something that you and I talked about before that is a very touchstone for us, because as dudes who have had Filipino family members be involved in interracial relationships, that we have seen this become a thing directly as far as being the token Filipino wife or having a relationship in which it can be perceived that way, it is a whole other discussion. It is a whole other discussion, dude. So I'm sure you can agree, but it's corny as fuck. It's tacky to see these couples and stuff, like Rose said on YouTube, kind of, you know, I spoke Japanese to my boyfriend today, or I took my you know, Filipino boyfriend to try Jollibee for the first time. That was a fucking video I saw, and I was like, what? Like, what?
What's going on over here?
Oh my god, yo, relax.
Yeah. Mike, do you have any thoughts on that to kind of continue off with what Rose was saying as far as that's concerned?
I am not in the TikTok realm, so hearing about this, it's news to me, but it's also not surprising. Disappointed, but not surprised is what I'll say. Yeah, it's shit, man. I think Rose talks a lot. You've talked a lot about how as various Asian cultures get more and more popular, that becomes like the thing that gets you clout. And I think that a lot of folks are probably too immature or don't know any better. They should know better. If they know better, they would do better. But folks who are just unaware of what they're doing, and the fact that they get popularity, they get clout off of that, is going to teach them that is what the world wants. So it's a totally different new kind of discussion now, or a new dynamic, but it kind of feeds into the similar problem of exploiting a culture because you think it's fun, or you think it's you like it, it's cool. Of course, that manifests in very different ways, as Ernell brought up. That I've seen it conspire into something a lot more oppressive and potentially violent, and not necessarily in a physical way, but it's just a violent treatment of what someone thinks you should be. But I don't know. It's I think that when I talked about it last time, I've had some people like hit me up and be like, "Yo, I think that like white folks have hit me up like, hey man, like I hear what you're saying. I just want to make sure like I'm doing right." Because I think that last time I talked about it, I was a little I think my personal discussion about it was a little incomplete, so I didn't want to make anyone feel like no,
for sure.
Like white men can't date Asian women or whatever. Like I didn't want that to make anyone feel like that was what they should have came away with, because that's fine. It's just like, if you are going to do that, you need to be very conscious of this dynamic. And I think that's what I said to a lot of folks is like, I'm not saying that you can't do that, because you're attracted to who you are. It's fine. But if you are going to engage in that, here are the things that you need to know about this to make sure that you are not part of the problem. So like just you engaging in like having that relationship that's not a problem. How you approach it, how you treat that relationship, that can potentially be a part of the problem. So understand this and that, and you should be good, man. Like that's what I wanted to get across there. Because you'll avoid things like that fetishization that you see on fucking like TikTok or whatever the fuck. Like, and the more people see that, the more they think that that's normal. And I just want people to know that is not normal.
Not fucking normal at all. It's not.
Yeah. And I mean, normal is relative, but that's just not okay. Just because it's popular doesn't mean it's okay. And and I'm glad, Rose, you're bringing that up, because that's a part of the world that I'm not familiar with, and so in a way I'm learning about that. And I hope folks out there, maybe that's just the old man in me.
You're not missing much. I can tell you that.
I'm not old.
Rose, you look like you're about to jump in. What's up?
Yeah,
I found it. Okay, I put it in the Discord and politics chat. But that's the same girl who was pretending to be Korean.
Oh no.
I don't know.
Let's go. Oh, yikes.
Yep, that's the same person.
That is the
Oh
same
no!
human being.
Oh, you hate to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
you
it's stuff
do.
like that. You know what I mean?
You absolutely hate to
Oh
see it.
no! Oh no! Okay.
Put it in the show notes, or now put it in the show notes.
Yeah,
And be like,
that'll be
make
there.
sure,
That'll
make
be
sure you
there.
keep this. Yeah, and I think seeing that is like people get clout off that, and they're taught the wrong lesson. Once they get the clout, they're just like, yo, this is gonna make me money. This is gonna make me popular. And shit, man, it's a whole different ball game out there. I guess that yeah, I guess like if you're not familiar with, like I wasn't.
Yeah, this
Damn.
is like a whole trend too for like people on TikTok. It'll be like white people that are essentially just like, oh, but like I put on the cat ears and like I did, like I taped the sides of my like eyelids and I've like photoshopped my eyelids out. Like it's like a whole thing. And I think it's one thing to have beauty trends that come and go, right? But there are people whole ass pretending to be like, oh, like I'm like Korean, like, and they're not. They're like
Yeah.
from like fucking Oklahoma or some shit, and they're just like taping the back of their eyes and stuff. It's very weird because again, like that, it's such a stark contrast. You'll see hate crimes being rampant, but if you're Korean or Japanese, you're like the favorite, you know. Not to say that like Korean Americans and like Japanese Americans don't face any issues as well, because they still are the subject. Again, like when hate crimes happen, like it doesn't matter what you are. Okay,
Yeah.
like as long as you look Asian, like they're gonna come after you. But there is something to be acknowledged about the way those cultures are viewed, and that not all Asians are gonna be viewed the same, right? And it's very weird to acknowledge, but also there's no solution to it. Because how are you gonna like? You can't do anything about this kind of stuff. All you can do is call it out and be like, "You do not look like that." And the whole entire thing is like appealing to. It's like inherently you can kind of tell that when people Asian fish, quote unquote, they are essentially kind of like the whole gag comes with they'll make themselves look like this, and then they'll act all like babyish and cute, and then like they'll like lip sync to like audios in like Japanese or Korean, and then they'll do the little dances and stuff like that, and it's very like you can tell that these people don't view Asian women as a whole as people, more so as products. And it's hard because you can't escape the sexualization of Asian women. Like it's always going to happen. But it's worse when people that aren't Asian at all are benefiting off this kind of fetishization by like, doing the whole entire like the cutesy Asian girl look, like sexualizing like schoolgirl outfits, which is still very weird to me. Like as an adult who, went I didn't go to school in an Asian country, but like I remember like wearing uniforms as a kid. And I'd be very weirded out if people were sexualizing a middle school outfit that, you know, is worn by children, and then has the skirt hiked up all the way and stuff like that. And it's always specifically the perpetrators of this are usually like non-Asian women, which is very weird and very creepy in a sense. But you see stuff like that, right? And it's hard because it's like you're fighting this weird. I saw this conversation that was being held, and even shows make fun of it. Like BoJack Horseman has made this little jab about like, yes, women should be allowed to be sexual, but Asian women can't be sexual without being fetishized and being seen as like this like babyish little thing, and like boiled down to like childlike. The qualities are just kind of there, and it's not even because of that's not how Asian women actually are. It's just because of media and media portrayals of um, good old like Asian women always being like docile little servants, and it's you can tell that it's damaging if it does exist in the culture itself. Like there's a huge misogyny problem in Japanese workplaces, for example. Um, People have been arguing for years in Japan for women to be allowed to not wear heels to work. There's a lot of conversations around that it's obvious it's damaging, right? But people still partake in it because they're not thinking about like the long term kind of thing. They're thinking about the short term kind of like, oh, but it looks cute on me, so like why does it matter kind of deal. And it's hard and very awkward and very difficult to have a conversation about, because again there's just so many layers to it. Like not all Asians are the same. Whenever this topic comes out, like I can go for hours about it because there's so many layers. Like we could go from like VTubers adopting like Asian-esque personas and profiting off Asian culture while staying silent about Asian American hate. Or we could talk about like Asians having an identity crisis because they're not really sure how they're able to have conversations about Asian American hate, but they also have to realize that they benefit partially from white privilege, right? And again, like that's not even a topic that can be said in definite terms. Like that can't even be generalized because all Asians look different. All Asians look different. It's hard to, I guess, boil down all the topics to speak about. It's kind of like you're watching everything run in a different direction and you're trying to grab it all in and explain everything comprehensively. But there's just so many little issues that are popping up online. There's so many issues that are popping up in real life. And I think to sum it all up, I think it's just weird that you're in this time where Asians have never been hated more, but also never been loved more, but in a very specific tightrope way. Like when you think about like Asians as a whole, right? For me, like I'm Chinese, but I have never been told, "Oh, you look Chinese." People will tell me like, "Oh, you're Chinese, but you look Korean or you look Japanese," and they expect me to be like, "Oh my gosh, like thank you, that means so much." Like they expect it to be a compliment. Like being called, "Oh, you look Japanese or Korean" is like inherently a compliment to these people. And I'm just like, nah, I'm fucking from Hong Kong, dude.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. I have this deep ass voice. All right. I'm this short little Asian girl, but like I have nothing to service y'all with this. I leave tissues up my nose when I sleep if I have allergies. I give out really loud farts. I eat in bed and I get the crumbs everywhere. My boyfriend has to clean up after me. Like I'm not, you know what I mean? Like, and the reality of that is so hard because it's like not Asian people just cannot comprehend that Asian people are not like Asian women specifically are not like, oh, it's like, oh, you're cute all the time or whatever, and like you have to be like, oh, this cutesy like girlish whatever the fuck. And again, like that, yeah, it's very like okay. I remember very early on when I was like, this is like the light bulb moment for me when I was growing up. But Anna Akana had this video about yellow fever, and this was released like forever ago. But that video was like a little milestone, and like the little light bulb in my head turned on. I was like, oh shit, she's fucking right, dude. She's got a good ass point. And it was literally about how yellow fever affects Asians in this way that it's not flattering. People will always tell you your entire life, like, oh, you should be flattered that you're Asian because people like Asians now. It's like trendy to be Asian. And they'll be like, oh, but at least you get like the attention and stuff. So you should be glad. And I'm like, I realize it's not good attention, right? Like there's something weird about this concept of I've been told multiple times in not even just in my career, but in my social presence, like you have followers because you're this cutesy Asian girl who, you're Asian and you're pretty and you post selfies online. And like that's all there is. And it's really like I get it. You know what I mean? Like I can't deny that people will follow me because of my looks, right? Or because like people have yellow fever. But also consider that's not my fucking problem. Right. Like I cannot help being what do you want me to do? Cosplay as a white person? Like what? Like I can't remove the Asian in me. It's not my fault that I'm seen as a fucking product in like a market or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think I realized this very recently with the suit picture of me that blew up, which was insane. And I'm very thankful that people liked it because it was mostly women complimenting me, but like but it's a woman only event, first of all. But it was like my following, I think, doubled or almost like a little more than doubled. I went from like 6.9 to like 15.5.
Oh shit! God damn!
Jesus Christ!
Yeah, that's a fucking jump.
Hey, cash in though.
I know, right?
For the suit pick, and I'm very grateful that people liked me in the suit pick. But people after that were like, there was like some funny comments like, "Oh, life is so easy for you now because you have clout," and I'm like, it's just a number for one, and two, like when women get attention on the internet, like they're just gonna be here for my selfies, dude. They're not gonna be here for like when I have like opinions about shit. Like nobody's gonna give a fuck if I'm out here guns blazing about like Asian American hate because they followed me for the goddamn suit pick. All right, the woman, however, I love the woman. all the women that
of
quote
course.
tweeted myself. I was like, wow, this is a woman. Like, I was very happy because the response of that selfie was like from like K-pop fandom, and then like the Genshin Impact fandom, and I was very pleased about that because I was like, wow, few things that I really like, and also most of them are women. So like, like women are non-binary, and I'm like, thank God, because I did not want the men in my DMs. But it's weird because you'll still have like these comments, like somebody was like, oh, like this is either like a normal girl that just posts selfies on Twitter or she like does porn, and I was like, this feels a little this feels racist. This feels vaguely racist.
It is. It is.
Right?
Let's come at this correct. It is
Let's
racist.
go, like, and if you saw like some white girl posting a picture of herself and like it blew up, they'd be like, "Oh my god, she's so pretty," but it's because I'm Asian. They're probably like, "Oh, she probably does porn." Like, what the fuck? First of all, doing porn is not a bad thing. Second of all, is it because I'm Asian?
Yeah. Yeah,
it probably is. You know what I mean? And it's so awkward because I'm just like, dude, when I've had this conversation with multiple friends, but there's always like men with this assumption, like women will be talking about like being followed home, being like stalked online, being harassed, like all this other shit, all this like the uncomfortable things of being a woman. And then men will respond with like, oh, but I can't get free drinks at a bar though. Or like, oh, I can't, I don't have like pretty privileges. If I was a woman, like things would be totally different for me. And I'm like, but you're not getting it. See? Okay, yes, women get hyped up in online communities, but you have to consider that I think being a woman on the internet specifically, and I guess participating in womanhood as a whole, I think that it's something that you have to actively participate in. And I mean this in a very logistic way. I mean this in like the investment of makeup, the investment of appearances, looks. Like you spend thousands of dollars on skincare products, you spend thousands of dollars on makeup. Like womanhood inherently is performed. And I think whenever I talk about this, I think of Simone de Beauvoir, who is referenced in Nier Automata as with the opera, android that you end up fighting as a boss fight. And her whole entire theory is that like womanhood, you're either born with womanhood or it's something that it's an act that's performed, right?
Yeah.
And the traits of like femininity is very much like it like you have to debate and weigh like, are you born with it as a woman inherently, or do you have to perform it as like an active action? And I definitely think of like it's very much it's an investment, right? Girls spend a lot of money in clothes, etc., stuff like that. So when guys are always like, oh, but like women have it so easy, and it's like, but you're not looking at the costs of all this. You're not looking at like, for example, there's this huge thing about. Sorry, I'm getting off topic here, but specifically about like Asian female streamers. They're always kind of at the stick of the. They're always at the butt end of the stick of. How do I phrase this? Asian women that are streamers are always at the kind of totem pole of. No, that's not the right word. Sorry, let me think about this for like 5 seconds.
It's okay. It's okay.
Asian women who are streamers are always treated as the prime example of it's so easy to be a female in gaming. All you need to do is look pretty, be Asian, have a cute voice, and stream, and everything's just so fucking easy for you. But they don't realize the statistics that are behind that. When women start streaming, they inherently have better presentation. They have, a better setup as a whole. Like they care very much about putting in effort all the way through. Compared to like when you think of guys that stream, they usually just kind of have like the webcam in the corner, no stream branding, stuff like that. Women inherently have to put more effort in the beginning, and also they lose out on viewership much faster. So people are always like, "Oh, woman, it must be so easy to be a woman." It's not true. Men still dominate the top page of Twitch. You can use like very small examples like Amaranth, who like does like those hot tub streams or whatever. But those are people that like she's not stealing your viewers. Someone that wants to watch a fucking hot tub stream is not going to be watching, like Andy from Sacramento play Call of Duty Warfare or whatever. It's like she's not stealing your viewers, dude. And I think everyone as a whole assumes that Asian American women have things so fucking easy in terms of gaming or entertainment or whatever. But you got like there's always constant talks about like one, just being a woman in gaming is absolutely horrible. Would not recommend. But also please more women work in gaming spaces. It's hard, like it's a weird like divide in between. But Asian women specifically always get targeted because it's like, oh, gamers love Asian women. And it's like that statement in itself is very weird because it's like, oh, like they're like this project that's set. It's like Asian women are this little like prep project that's like a statistic for success, and that they're not people who have their own issues or like are normal people. It's so I have no other words for it. It's just fucking weird.
It is. It is.
That's sum it all up.
Yeah,
shit's fucking weird.
Shit is fucking weird out here, dude. And yeah, I think Rose, you're on your fucking A game today, dude. You're killing it like usual.
I have so much to say. Specifically about like Asian American representation in gaming, and also like the recent trend of like so much shit going on. Sorry, Michael, if you want to talk, tell me to shut up, okay?
No, it's okay.
Good.
It's okay. I got you. We got to like, start tying up the end of the show here, anyways. Mike, for all of our viewers and listeners at home, where can people find you to hang out and communicate?
Look, you can find me and all of my bullshit at Michael P. Higham on Twitter, and I share my work. I try, I've kind of backed away from. I've never really been actively been part of the daily discourse because I don't want to put myself in that line. I just, I stay in my lane. I think over time, I've learned how to stay in my lane. And I think that this goes back to, or this relates to something Rose said, is that like the type of audience that you attract, it's hard to control that. But and I feel very fortunate that I don't have big numbers, but the people who are there, like they vibe with me, and I think I'm very grateful for that. So if you fuck with me, hit me up on Twitter. I just post about like my work and only very specific games that I'm into. So I'm not necessarily going to be talking. You're not going to see like fucking awesome headshots in Call of Duty, or you're not going to see like all the news about Fortnite and stuff from me. You're just gonna get a whole lot of Final Fantasy 14, Persona, Nier, and Yakuza. That is, yeah,
taste in this game genre.
That's my lane, and I feel very fortunate that I've been able to kind of carve out that lane, and also just like a bunch of my personal stuff. Like I don't know, I don't. I feel I'm starting to understand like the kind of the old guard I used to work with in games media. Like I was like, oh damn, y'all don't really share your work that much anymore. And they're like, yeah, I just stay in my own lane. I think, and I'm getting to that point too, where like, oh shit, I get it. I want to share what I want to share, and I'll be vocal about things when I feel like it. Yeah, that's what you're gonna get from me. And also like check out what's going on at Gamespot.com. That's where I work. We have a lot of dope shit lining up that I'm going to be at the forefront of, which is very exciting. So keep your eyes peeled for that, as well as my colleagues such as Lucy James and Tamor Hussein, especially Tamor. That's my guy. And yeah.
For sure.
The vibes. Yeah.
For sure. Dude, yes. Go hit up Mike. Absolutely. Rose. Yes. First off, congratulations again on your wonderful comeuppance and making those life moves. Where can people at home find you to communicate and hang out and watch you from the looking glass?
Got you. So _ not Rose on Twitter. I tweet, I like to think of my Twitter as a garbage dumpster heap. I tweet what I think is funny sometimes, and if it's not funny, I'll delete it. Okay.
Like, oh, this only got 7 likes in 20 minutes. Yeah, I hate to see it.
Nah, it was not a banger. It flopped. Get it out of here. It was very funny to me, though. Very funny to me. I kind of just, I mostly talk about. I think the rare times that I ever really talk on Twitter, which is not super often, but I think it's less now, just because I'm like dealing with like post graduation bliss. Okay. But I mostly talk about esports gaming, what it's like to work in gaming, because I have a lot of opinions on it, obviously.
Yeah.
I can go for hours about shit like that. I usually talk about like my intern experience at T1. I usually talk about like my job at G4. And mostly just like what it's like to work in gaming. And I try to be a good example for aspiring women that want to work in gaming. But also, at the same time, if you see me tweeting about shit at 3 o'clock in the morning, look away.
That's on them.
That's on them.
I know.
So if you see me tweeting bullshit, that's on you.
Yep.
Yeah, I tweet it for myself. If you see it, that's a you problem. Stay safe though.
Man, I'm saying that's the.
I love that energy. I love that energy because it's the same thing for me, and I think that's the only way you can do it, really.
Just post when you want to post, shit post when you want to post, say whatever you want to say, do your thing. Even if it's at 3:30 in the morning and I'm up because I just got done watching a really sad movie and I'm up in my fucking field. Mind your goddamn business, you know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yep. I'll tweet once in a while. I come to Twitter to be batshit insane in front of the entire gaming industry. Okay, that's it.
It's the only way to do it, really.
It gives character.
Only way to do it. Guys, thank you so much for coming on. Again, I appreciate the both of you. We'll probably chat for a quick minute after we're done with this. But for everyone at home, thank you for coming in. This has been the Subtle Sound of AAPI Hate reunion show. We will be back probably next year for another AAPI Heritage Month celebration, and I want to try to get you, each of you guys, including Holly, on the show as a guest, as a singular thing for as things drip feed and come out. Like, you guys are all amazing, and again, this started with you three and me, so I'm forever thankful for you guys for coming on and just spitting the fire, spitting the facts, you know what I mean? Especially you, Rose, coming in here with the fucking heat every goddamn time, you know what I mean? It's lit. It's lit. Everyone at home, again, thank you for coming in and hanging out. This has been the Good Kraken Show. Come back in about half an hour where we have our boy Island Style back to talk about that PI and the AAPI part that we were talking about all month. We're going to talk to him a little bit about his comeuppance and his big moves that he's been making this month. So come in and hang out. It's going to be a good time. Mike, Rose, again, thank you. And until next time, everybody, stop AAPI hate. Fuck all that noise. And bye.